So if you remember, in the last video we discussed about handling authentication in the front end of a full stack application, how we handle protected routes in React, and how we make use of the context API for implementing a global state. In this video, we will continue that and understand what role the backend plays in the authentication process. If you remember, in the last video, we discussed that tokens are sent by the backend once the backend has successfully validated the user data, like the username and password, and this token is further used for making API calls to the backend. So we'll understand how this token can be generated and how it is sent to the front end and how the front end sends it back to the backend for making protected API calls. Okay, so let's first understand why we needed this system. Now imagine the front end makes a request to the backend for validating this user, and the backend finds that it is a valid user. Now the backend only says to the front end that yes, this is a valid user. Okay. Now the front end, say the front end stored that valid user in the user context. Okay, there's a user context where the front end stores the user authentication value, true or false, right? Now imagine the backend has connections to the database, and there are some API routes such as get block data, right? Now if the user is not authenticated, we do not want the backend to send the block data to the front end. But if there is no validation in place in the backend, then the backend cannot know if this API call was made by a valid user, because then every time we'd have to send the username and password to the backend. Then the backend will validate. Then again, after validation only, it sends the block data to the front end. With every API call, we would have to do that. To make the process easier, instead of this sending this again and again, taking this again and again from the front end, we give the front end a token, and we only look for the token in the API calls. So when the front end makes a call to the backend API/block data, and it wants the block data, access to the block data, the backend will first run a function. It will first run a function. This function is called middleware. This function will check whether the front end has also sent a token in the header of the request. If there's a token, the backend will validate this token. Like if it is a valid, we cannot just share any random thing as a token, right? There has to be some validation. The presence of a token is not enough. So it will validate the token against a particular user and password, and then if it is validated, the backend sends the block data to the front end. Clear? Now let's get into the code. We will use one of my projects to understand this code, because I have that code already written. If I were to write it again, it would take a lot of time. So absolutely no need of that. The primary goal is to understand the concept. While we are at it, let me tell you, the purpose of me making these videos is to bridge the gap between theory and application. So there are a lot of times when we do something just for the sake of doing it. We know this is how backend is implemented, so this is how authentication is implemented, so we just keep on implementing authentication the same way, treating it as a boilerplate code. But the better way to learn anything would be to understand the logical working of it. So we in the last video discussed why protecting routes are necessary, how we protect routes, and how we redirect the user based on the authentication state, and how we make use of use context to manage a global state, so that everyone in the app knows what the authentication state is. So if you have not watched that video, you can go back, watch the video after this video. I'd say it's better if you watch it right now. Pause the video here, go watch that again, and come back right here. So let's get into the code now. So I'll actually first run the code. Let's see what it looks like. So I'll say npm's, okay, my bad, I'll say npm start. The backend is successfully running, server successfully running. I mind you that I have a database working, and it's in the local in my local system, the database, not MongoDB Atlas, and the backend will be fetching all the data from the database, MongoDB database. So the backend is live. We can now go to the front end and open terminal, and here we can also npm start. This should start the development server for our React app, and here it is. Don't mind, this is an incomplete project as of now. I'm planning to complete it pretty soon, but the route that we are interested in is that if you noticed, I tried to go to localhost 3000/playground/dashboard, but as soon as I click enter, it redirects me to login. We know how to implement this because we saw the last video. So I don't remember the test username and password, so let's just create a new account. So my full name would be Aftab, username would be so, and email would be 1@2.com. My password would be 123, confirm password would be 123, no bio and no profile. Let's just select one profile pic. Let's just left arrow, and we quickly sign up, and you have been successfully signed up. So now we can use the username was so and the password is 123, and we can successfully log in. So here you can see we have all these blog data here. We have a draft board, we have categories, we have author panel. Here I'm being shown my data, not in a very incomplete UI, of course. But here you can see I have the blogs. The images are loading, and I can click open this blog, I guess. Can I? No. I can make some changes to the blog. Okay, so if you notice, I have some options to perform something. I can either create a new blog, I can unpublish this blog, I can feature this blog, edit this blog, and many more. So these are all handled through API calls. So I was not allowed to enter this page without logging in, right? React was taking care of protecting this route. React was the one protecting this route. But what stops me from making a call to localhost 5000/blogs/get published? So this get request will actually get me all the published blogs, but I'm not authenticated. I can just send this request and the backend will return me all the blogs. It does, right? All the blogs are returned, published blogs are returned. So because this is a GET request, I did not feel the need to protect this route. But this is for your understanding that backend calls can be made without being authenticated in the front end. Somebody more intelligent would use something like Postman to make post requests with certain headers and certain body to the backend. So it's really important to protect API routes, API endpoint routes. So let's see how this authentication works. Okay, now look, even if I refresh this page, I am still logged in. So now my browser knows, something is telling my browser that this user has been authenticated. See, if I copy this route, and if on some other page I try to go there, see, it opens this page. So my entire browser now knows in whichever tab I'm willing to open this route, it allows me, because my entire browser now knows that I am logged in, I am a valid user. And only logout button can log me out of the app. Now if I refresh, I am in the redirect page, and now if I try to go to that route, I am redirected to login. But in this page, I'm still logged in, and see, if I refresh, back to login page. This works because we are maintaining, we are storing something that tells the browser that I am successfully logged in. What is that something? The token. Let's now get into the code. Okay, so I'll quickly open both of these in VS Code. So we will only open the pages that we are concerned with. let us see what login page does. So in the login page, we have a username field and a password field. And after the user fills this data, he can submit the request, and the login page, the login.jsx file, will populate this form data, and it will send the form data to this API, to this endpoint /users/login. It's a post request, and in the headers it has a content type application/station, and in the body it has the form data. Fine. If the response is not okay, fails to login, and if it is okay, it says login successful and the error is set to null. And after successful login, it actually sets a timer of 1 second, and in 1 second it sends us back to the login page. So it sends us to /login, but because we remember how we protected routes, /login will again redirect the user to the dashboard because the user has successfully been logged in, right? That's about it. This is the entire function. Okay, you populate the form data, you send the form data to whatever API endpoint is handling the login function, right? Let's go to the backend. This is the backend code. Now, the route was /users/login, right? So it should be in the user routes. Notice in the user routes we have /login, /user/login. App.js is handling the /users part. So any API to any call to /users/login will come here. And whenever a post request is made to this route, we perform the function login user. Where can we find the function? Let's see. authcontroller.js. So in the controllers, we have authcontroller.js, and here is our login user function. It has Mongo imported, which is a Mongo schema. It has bcrypt imported for handling the password encryption, and it has JWT imported for handling the web tokens. So you define a secret first of all, okay, and it uses this secret plus the user data, whatever comes with the login form. It uses both of these to generate the unique token, so that the uniqueness is maintained. We can, in the request body, we will find username and password. Remember, we send the form data with the request body, so we will find username and password there. And now we will try to find one user who has this exact username. This is the syntax. And if no user was found, you can simply say the status is 400, invalid user, or password is the error message. And if the user is found, then we'll see if the password matches. How can we see? bcrypt.compare password and user.password hash. So user is the document from Mongo database. We found the particular user with this particular username, so we have this user constant, and this user constant is a JSON object. It has a key called password hash, and the password has been hashed and stored in this key. So now we compare the current password that the user is claiming to be his password and the password hash that we had stored while signing the user up, and this comparison will either return a true or a false. So isMatch will have either true or false. So if there's no isMatch, that means if isMatch is false, we return again invalid username or password. You can be more specific. You can, for this error, you can simply say invalid username, and for this error, you can simply say invalid password. Then, if both of these things are true, if the user has been found and if the password also matches, then we create the token. JWT.sign is the function that we use to create the token. We pass it an ID, which is the user ID, the user that we found in the database, his ID, and the username, which we can either take from here or we can take from the user variable. And with that, we pass it the JWT secret, and we may pass it some optional, options. In this case, I have passed an option of expires in 3 days. So token will expire in 3 days. So now you know why, if I refresh this page, the login route does not come, that I'm still considered logged in. because the token that was sent to me by the backend is stored in my machine for 3 days. So it will store it for 3 days. How is it storing that? In the local storage. We'll see the code for that in a bit. See, so here we created the token, and we also use the user ID. So along with the token, we also send the user ID. Why do we do that? Because if you want to identify in the front end which user have I just logged in. So if we are only sending the token, that alone is not enough information to identify which user I am logging in. So if you see in my app, I have this author profile page, and to show all this information, I have to know, right, which user did I actually log in. So that's why we share the user ID along with the token to the front end, and we store this user ID as well. And wherever we need, we use this user ID to make calls to the backend and get all the data related to the user. Okay, so I hope this has been very clear. I explained each and every line of the code. Now we will get to the front end logic of storing this, whatever response we received, how we store it. So here we have this function here, login result. Did you notice this? So if you watched the last video, you will know that I said in the context, in the custom hooks, you can also pass functions. So along with the user state, whether the user is logged in or not, you can also create functions. Like I have created a login function and a logout function, and I also pass these functions in my context. So because I'm importing the context in the login.js file, where is that? Here I am importing use const login from the useauth context hook. Okay, so now I'm logging in and passing this result, whatever response my server gave me. That is, we just saw the token and the user ID. We are logging in and passing the token and the user ID as parameters to this function. What is it doing now? The login function will take the parameters and first of all set user to have these parameters. Okay, so whoever is consuming the value of user to check if the user is authenticated, they can immediately know that the user has been authenticated, and this is the token for the user and this is the user ID. They can immediately know. But for later usage, it will also store the data in local storage. It will create a local storage.set item, and it will store the token as user data.token in the local storage. So as long as we have the token in the local storage, we will continue to know that we have we are successfully logged in, right? Okay, so similarly, when logging out, we will set the user to null. So anyone who is consuming the value of user would immediately know, okay, the user is logged out. And it will also remove the token from local storage. Otherwise, the token will persist for 3 days. And even if you click logout, the next time you come in, user will be set to false, but the token will be there. So the app will be really confused whether the user is logged in or not. So notice that we have also implemented a token expired function. This is because we need to keep checking whether the token is expired or not. Because as soon as the token is expired, the page won't know that the token has expired. Like, it won't change its state. I'll still be in this page. Even if the token expires, I'll still be in this page. Now imagine I'm trying to make a call like unpublish. Okay, if I make that API call, backend call of unpublishing this particular blog, it needs the token to validate that call. We'll see how we are sending the token and all. But as I said, backend endpoints are also protected, so it will need the token. But the token has expired. But yet I'm still in this page. So I'm in this page. I'll try to unpublish. The backend will reject my request because the token has expired. And then I'll realize, okay, my token had expired. I should have reloaded the page. So if I reload the page, it will again show me the login page, and then I'll log in again, and then my token will again be in my system, and again I can send validated API calls. Okay, now coming to how we send the token along with my API calls, we will just take an example. Say in the editor page, we may be making a call handle add blog. Okay, so if someone is trying to add a blog, they must be authenticated, right? Where is the authentication? See, in this fetch request to blogs/save new blog, this is a post request. It has the form data, which is all the data of the new blog that I just created. And in this request, we are also sending a header which has authorization is to user.token. So remember the user use context, the state user, this one has the value for both token and user ID. So we use this data to get the token, and we send this token to the backend. Now the backend, before processing this request coming to this route, it also must first validate the token, right? So again, we have the role of a middleware there. So how is the backend implementing the middleware? The route was in blogs, right? So /blog/save new blog. Where is save new blog? Save new blog. See that first we run the auth middleware, then we run the multer middleware, then only after these two middlewares have been run, we run this create new blog function. Where's the create new blog function? We have it in the blog controllers, and here we have create new blog. So it will just take the request, in the request.body it will find all the data. It will put it to S3 and everything. So you get the idea. There's no more code related to authentication here. Okay, so there's a auth middleware, authenticate.js middleware. What does it do? It first of all has jsonwebtoken, and it takes a request, a response, and a next. And this next is the function that is going to be performed after this middleware. Okay, so const token will be from request.header authorization. So remember, in the fetch request we had a header, and inside the header inside the header object we had authorization is to user.token. So authorization is the file, is the value that I'm looking for, and this will give me the token. If I did not get a token, then it is not a valid API call. So I will deny authorization, right? And if I found the token, then I'll try to validate the token. So someone might be sending authorization is to 1 2 3 4 5. So just the presence of the token is not enough. It should be a valid token. How do we verify valid tokens? Remember, we used a JWT secret along with ID and username to generate this token. So we'll do the same here. We will use the JWT secret and we'll verify this token against this JWT secret. See, we verified the token. Okay. So if we have decoded now, then what we do? Then we actually change the request for the next function. Okay. So imagine I'm sending a token. Okay, with the front end makes the API call. First, the authentication middleware will run, and if it is validated, then it will give the user data to the next function. In our case, save new blog. So it amends this request.user with decoded.user because it found the user. Okay, and then it will call the next function. So request.user is changed, and then it calls the next function. And if there's an error, just catch the error and say token is not valid. Okay, that's about it. I think that is a pretty detailed video on how authentication works, and that should do it for you, and that should work really well. This I know this is a longer video than most of my videos, but I'm hoping this was worth it. Thank you for your time. See you in the next.